You're doing what you should be doing.
I appreciate it. It's so chaotic, especially at the beginning of the school year with 3 boys, and they're all so close in age. It's just wild. So
yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, how old are they now? I think the last I had seen them was back when I was working for Eric down in Homestead, and you were just bringing the 3 of them down every once in a while with Leo to do like some testing. So how big are they all?
Yeah, they're 12, 10, and 8.
Yeah.
My 12-year-old's going to be 13 soon, so we haven't been able to fully commit to the program down in Homestead just because of stick and ball sports, man. It's like, they're really into football and all this stuff, and I played football too, but I told them, it's karting's one way or the other. It's you're all in or you're not in at all.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so was this the first week back at school for the boys then?
Yes.
Getting back in? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the same as I'm the oldest of 5, and all my younger brothers and then my little sister are all about 2 years apart. So
Really?
yeah.
5 kids. Jeez.
Yeah. It was busy. We played same thing, baseball and soccer growing up for a little bit. I was we got into doing the indoor rental leagues at least when I was like 9 or 10.
Right.
And the last like couple of years I played baseball or soccer, I was like telling my team like this is it, like I'm retiring, I'm quitting, we're full-time racing. And then my dad's like, no, we actually don't have the money to go racing, we don't know anything yet, so you're going back to play baseball a little more, which I did like it. And I kind of wished I played a little bit more growing up. But yeah, I'm sure as a dad, that's cool as it'd be to have the next generation racing. That's a tick cheaper, just like a tiny bit. Little stuff.
Just a tick. What age did you start full time then?
So I did club racing when I was 12. We took a year off. We did because I grew up in Georgia, so there was the original like Andretti indoor karting center up there. And Dylan Murray and his dad, David Murray, they were in the same kind of contingent of kids. Dylan, I think he was doing either LMP3 or he might have done a couple of LMP2 stuff at IMSA at the end of last year. I can't remember where he ended up now or what his ride is like now, but we saw them down at Barnesville like a year later. That was like enough where my dad had some confidence to be like, well, if we buy a go-kart now, at least there's like one family we know and we can just do everything they do, buy what they buy, and we're not like totally out to lunch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy, man. Now 12 years old is it seems old. That's when I started too. And you go down to Homestead and those kids are down there 3 days, 4 days a week, like doing the homeschool thing at the track. I don't know how my kids are supposed to, drop in and somehow compete with that, but that's kind of the problem right now.
Yeah, 12 years old now, they're in a dirt late model.
Yeah, nuts.
It's crazy. Yeah. Well, what we like to do on the podcast, Ryan, is kind of just go through the history beginning, at the start of your intro to karting all the way up to present day. Watching you over the years, I mean, I'm excited about it because I saw you develop and I saw you transition to 2-cycle and then moving on to big cars. And to me, I think it's such a great story. And I know you're a busy guy, but man, we appreciate so much for you finding the time for us, because I think we got a lot to talk about, a lot of fun stuff and some great stories. And we just, I don't know if you saw it, we released yesterday, Xander released the Frank Kelleher podcast. And I don't know if you ever raced with Frank, but he come up through the Gold Cup.
Oh, really? No, I have. I don't know. I might have raced with him at one point.
You probably did.
Yeah.
And so really, and you watch the podcast, it got emotional, but he talked about, coming up through the ranks and traveling and, scraping just to find enough gas money and things like that. And it was all about what karting's about, is learning life lessons. It was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is about.
Yeah. So speaking of that, let's talk about your intro into karting. What's your first memories of karting? And I would guess, I know your dad was always by your side, so I'm guessing it involved your dad. But your first memories of karting when you got started.
I was always, with my dad, I was always just big motorsports fans. Big racing fans, IndyCar especially, and he bought me a little yard cart, kind of a yard cart. It was like it was a bit more than that. It had like the Rick Mears Pennzoil body on it, and I tear it around the neighborhood in that, and it actually got to a point where the neighborhood homeowners association had enough with me driving that thing and ripping through the hood. And that's kind of what really spurred on hey, let's go over to Naples. We'll rent a cart. I had no practice. I'd never driven a race cart before. My first weekend at a racetrack was a race. I had no idea. We had no idea what we were doing. Just rented a cart from a vendor, and dropped me into. They didn't have any at the time. It would have been the purple restrictor, junior sportsman, for my age, but they didn't have any of those. That cart or the engine, I guess, or the restrictor. So they put me into the gold restricted class, which was. I forget what they called it, that restricted junior or something like that.
Yeah.
So all these kids were older than me, and it was my first time ever in a go-kart. And went out there and got lapped. And my first time coming off the track with my first race, I was like, "What are we doing? This is wild. This is absolutely nuts." So yeah, it went straight from a yard cart to my first race, and then my second race, I did quite a bit better on the same weekend. Did quite a bit better, and it was still very, very, very intimidating because I was racing against, at the time I was 12, I was racing against, I think it was 13, 14-year-olds, maybe even 15-year-olds. So yeah, it was just a lot in one weekend. But once we kind of settled in and went after it, bought a cart, started in the proper class, and just it was basically like during the season, it was every weekend from Naples and Sarasota, which is a 2-hour drive, and then Sarasota is a 4-hour drive, and we'd alternate that. And that's basically how it got started.
And Florida was always the home of a lot of great kart racers. I know when I think of Naples, I think of the Jolly family, and Courtney was, or not Courtney, Candace was, Courtney too, but Candace was, I mean, you beat Candace, you did something. She was strong.
Yeah, she was in my first kart race in my class. That was intimidating. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
She had some super scary looking Simpson Super Bandit helmet that was all black or something, and she was always like right up on the wheel. And it's that was my first taste of karting. But I was so thankful that I had the opportunity to grow up racing in South Florida in that Naples and Sarasota community, because there was a lot of dads showing up with their kids, in small trailers, and it wasn't, nothing like it is today, where you have, these transporters with 7 carts in a team or whatever. And it was attainable. Success was attainable if you worked really hard. And it definitely taught me a lot, the local stuff. And then, obviously once the national deal started kicking in, that's a whole nother gear.
I was at Naples once. I went down. Don Jolly was worked with WK quite a bit, and ended up being served on the board of trustees with me for a while. But I remember going down there one day, and we were walking around, and he said, "Now just be careful when you go here or there." And he pointed to certain areas where it was a little wet and swampy that had some rain. He said, "Just be careful." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, there's snakes." I said, "Wait a minute. It's a go-kart track. What are you talking snakes?" He goes, "No, there's snakes."
Yeah, it was in the swamp,
gators,
for sure.
And gators, yeah.
Yeah. And Candace raced those swamp buggies, just down the road. I was in the swamp, early development stage in Naples. And but yeah, that go-kart track, it's funny, I think of that thing when I was a kid, and it felt like it was as big as Le Mans, and you go there, see it, when you're older, and it's like, oh my God, the thing is tiny little go-kart track. But it was great racing, and really well attended.
And any snakes or alligator stories?
I've got plenty in Florida, but not at Naples. No. Nope. We've had an alligator walk up to our door in our backyard and just start thumping on the sliding glass door. Oh yeah. Yep. That's Florida though, right? Big. Yeah. It's basically living with dinosaurs.
So do you have a dog?
Yes.
So how do you discipline the dog or take care of the dog so that it doesn't get it doesn't meet the alligator?
Yeah, we don't live near a lake anymore. We did at the time, and that's what you got to be careful for, is the lakes, that have alligators and stuff like that. But now it's iguanas. The iguanas are literally, the big ones are 5 feet long. They're massive, and they are everywhere. So eradication with an invasive species like that's a big thing, and the dog helps with that. Just being in the backyard, running them off. That's basically it.
And their iguanas, I assume, aren't as dangerous.
No, they have a nasty tail whip. They'll whip you big time. Yeah, it's Florida stuff, right? Sharks in the ocean, big lizards on land.
I live in Ohio. We have groundhogs. That's about the extent of it.
That's about it. Yeah. I'd prefer that side of it, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. So you talked about racing locally in Florida at Sarasota and at Naples, and just at that level there was strong competition. But then you step it up. Florida always had a good state series. They always were strong in the state series. So you start running the state series, and then how did that go?
Well, Xander, kind of like you, we had no idea what we were doing. None.
Yeah.
So we befriended some folks, and I kind of linked up with the Roofners, John Roofner, super talented driver, absolutely could have made it to IndyCar. You know, racing's not a fair sport. And I tell everybody it is one of the worst career paths to pursue, because especially if you're going for the top of IndyCar, NASCAR, or even the top of IMSA. I mean, if you put the numbers together and how many actual seats there are where you're getting compensated for your talent, it's not much when you compare that to the vast number of karters in the country, right? So yeah, we lined up with the Roofners, and we traveled all over the country doing all the national stuff. But most importantly, that's where I really learned the racecraft, doing Naples and Sarasota on alternating weekends so often. And that's what Florida gives you the opportunity to do, right? You don't shut down in the winter, you just keep racing. And I linked up with them, and John's dad was very, very good with the chassis and mechanically inclined. And I was not, learned a lot. And, I learned quickly that, while my friends were out on Fridays and Saturdays, and Friday nights, Saturdays, and Saturday nights, doing the fun stuff kids do, we were tearing down the go-karts, cleaning out the bearings, making sure everybody, because that's what these guys did, right? You see what guys are winning do, and you got to be that or better. Mm-hmm. So it taught me a lot about work ethic. What you put in is what you get out. Really did. And yeah, it was just, it was a lot of time on the road, a lot of makeup homework. That was really hard. I remember vividly doing lots of homework. I went to a really challenging school and did lots of homework in the back of that truck, just going down Alligator Alley and running up I-75, constantly making up tests. I always felt like I was right here, almost my nose underwater with school, but I had to make the grades. So that was the big thing. I had to make the grades to race, and that was the number one caveat with my dad. But yeah, it's so, when I think back on it, just how selfless the decision was for him. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, we had a boat, we take people on the boat, that's, and go out and, enjoy weekends that way. And he made the decision, I'm going to just forego all that. We're going to go spend weekends in the middle of nowhere, sweating our tails off so my kid can race go-karts. A lot of people, when you tell them that, especially when my dad did it, they said, you're going to do what? That's not going to go anywhere. That's just a hobby. That's not, I mean, yeah, do that sometimes, but you're spending money on this, on that. What? No way. Yeah. And, obviously karting's come a long, long way since then. But yeah, like you said, Randy, just taught me a lot about life in general, and about how hard I had to work in order to succeed at it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I talked with a racing dad recently, and especially now, right? But even back then, it's like he put it pretty simply. If you have 10 years to burn, and money aside, right, but 10 years where you're not focused on your job, you have a business that can almost run itself, or a job that you can basically moonlight, you can find out if your kid has a shot by the end of that 10-year window, right, of having to travel and put in all the time and effort, and hopefully along the way you don't mismanage your kid, right? I think that's the toughest thing, talking like we did at the beginning of the show, of how early every kid starts now, that there's so many parents that you just see, it's just one left turn when they should have gone right, of taking their kid all the way up. And if they're not a parent that already had ties into racing, they're at a massive disadvantage, because they don't know. If you had any one of your boys going up now, you would know, okay, this is, he's ready to go now. This is the smart play to go this way. This won't make sense because of this, and whatnot. And yeah, even if you had all the 10 years, all the time, and the kid ends up having the ability and talent and work ethic to go all the way, you still could make just one wrong decision. And like you said, there's just only so many truly professional seats, right, that are out there. And, staying in one, right? I mean, you can attest to that too, because you made it all the way up, and the difficulties of trying to stay in a professional role is super difficult too,
Right. Yeah. That's
But
what's scary. Like you
yeah.
said, the 10-year timeline, right? Even in IndyCar, even in anytime you move up in the ladder system to the next step, but karting, you can't just write a kid off after 2 or 3 years. He could show progress, and you might think, well, he's not winning, he's not dominating, he's not da 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 da. That switch can flip in year 4. It can flip in year 6, and all of a sudden you're like, man, just 2 years ago we were finishing 5th every weekend, and now we're winning races constantly. That's the scary part. It's like it could be there, and you just don't know. And you got to give a kid time to gain the confidence in the right environment, right? If for whatever reason there's something's not jiving chemistry wise and how you're dealing, like you said, with your parents or whatever, but then if you get to a certain point and something clicks and things start firing, that confidence just it starts snowballing, right? And that's where it gets going. And I've been in some ladder series where a certain car just didn't really fit my style too much, and I didn't look like a superstar. I didn't look great. It wasn't great, and then I get into the next level, and I get a test or try it at the next level, and and I just clicked with the car, and I was the guy to beat. So, but in karting, it is very tough because you have to start somewhere, and then you have to progress, and you have to gain your skills and what you do off the track, on the track, how you balance those. And these kids, a lot of kids, like I see the kids at Homestead that are 8 years old and they're there every weekend. I worry, you're going to burn those kids out, right? By the time they're 12, 13 years old, if they're spending that much time, they're going to get burnt out. I mean, it's like any other sport. That is everything these days, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, it is so over specialized. It's not like when I was a kid, you played every sport and you had a good time doing it, but you didn't have a batting coach for baseball. You didn't have like, I didn't have a quarterback coach working with me every day after school, like, the kids nowadays do. And karting's the same way now. I see these guys that are probably 19 working with these kids on a Wednesday at Homestead in a same cart. These 19-year-old obviously has to be of smaller stature to fit in the cart, and they're beating and banging on these kids to get them used to running in close quarters like that. I mean, all this stuff is like, when I saw it, I was like, well, wow, okay, this is another level. But yeah, you're right. You could have the budget, but you need that 10-year or whatever it is timeline, right? If they're going to be, let's say they start at 8, 9, you got to see it out till they're at least, potentially 16. Like Randy said, though, you see these kids. And did I see something about it? Some like 13-year-old in ARCA won recently, like this past
McKee,
weekend.
he had just turned 15 like the week before, and
15.
he had already been running late models at like 12, 13, 14. He
Wow.
won. And they've been running him a Trans Am the whole last year at 14, right? So if you think he's
Jeez.
Trans Am at 14, late models at 13, I mean, the start and progression, and again, they still don't know with this kid. And is when he goes to a truck or to an Xfinity car, is it going to transfer? Is it going to work out?
Right.
Are they going to position him right? Is Chevy going to have, the right doors open, the right guys kind of move on to another team at the right time? You see it all the time, like with F2 champs, right? They come up and they just win on a bad year. They win on a year, and it's like there's no seats in F1. It's the same kind of conversation of who's winning in, Indy next, right? Like, are they going to come up in a year where all of a sudden there's going to be the right door opens? Usually the champ goes somewhere, but there's no guarantee that a full seat opens up at the right, So
no, you're right. Timing is everything, right? If you end up if you have a really good year, like you said, Indy next or something like that, and it just so happens that all the contracts are not in a renewing year, right? In IndyCar, there's not really any open seats. You're kind of stuck, and to go raise the money to go do it again, to do another year of lights. That's a problem with, I shouldn't say problem maybe, but that is the biggest challenge in racing. Is you can have all the talent in the world, do everything right off track as well, but if the timing just doesn't line up, you could miss that opportunity completely.
And it obviously lined up for you. So kind of, you start going running nationals, and around how old are you then, right? If you started at 12, is that around 13, 14, 15
Yeah,
or so you
exactly.
guys start running the Gold Cup?
13, probably at the end of 13, somewhere in there. Yeah. 14, I raced nationals, Gold Cup for a couple of years, a lot of classes. We had 3 karts kind of constantly going at the same time. And then I started racing in Manufacturers Cup towards the end of my national karting deal with Tony Kart. And that was a lot of fun, completely different experience, taught me a lot. Because coming from Gold Cup with 4 cycles, going into the 2 cycle, they were so different. Just how you prepared the kart, how you drove it, everything like that was completely different. And I'm glad I was put in a position that kind of took me out of my comfort zone like that, and that's kind of how my career's been. It's been getting opportunities, very small, very, very short opportunities. Like, hey, you're going to have a test, or you might have 1 race and that's your time, right? So you got to go fast. You can't crash. Can't crash the kart. You got to go fast and don't crash and win. Those are the big top 2 priorities, I would say. But it was always that, just kind of moving, and we never really stayed in one category and just called it, this is where we're going to be.
And back in the day, Xander, we had WK, we had an award for someone who could win 3 national championships, called the Triple Crown winner. Ryan, you won that.
Yeah.
And not too many back when there was, and things have changed so much now, but we had Speedway Dirt, Speedway Pavement, Road Race, Manufacturers Cup, and Gold Cup. We had 5 series. And to win it, you could win it in 1 series, but you almost had to run 2. And I when you won it, did you win it in both Gold Cup and Manufacturers Cup, or just Gold Cup?
Yeah, it was both, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So he won that. And at that time, there might be 2 or 3 throughout our organization that won the Triple Crown. Ryan won it. And I do want to talk about your transition, because it always amazed me how quickly you adapted. But getting back to getting into the Gold Cup and entering the Gold Cup program nationally, you remember the first national event you went to?
Yeah. I believe it was Charlotte.
Okay.
It was Charlotte. And I think at one point, it was a Grand National. You were waving the flag at one of them. I know that. I do remember that part. The checkered flag meaning. I believe it was Charlotte, but I feel like the 4-cycle Gold Cup, it was a really solid training base for me, because it was all about momentum. It was all about keeping up momentum. If you had a bad line, or if you pinched the kart off in the exit a bit, you would lose a lot of RPM. And that, I believe, really put me in the right mentality for keeping momentum, being very smooth, being very cognizant of wheel angle, right? And not just wrenching the wheel. Things are quite a bit different now with how the karts are, and the 2-cycle and everything else, and how you just kind of flick the kart into the corner. Back then it was a bit more flowing. But I definitely think 4-cycle was a great place to start. And I'm glad it went that way, honestly, because it instilled some very, very, very important driving style basics in me that I believe went on to help me down the road.
Mm-hmm. We talked about this in the Frank Kelleher podcast, but there were 2 drivers that stick in my mind that made that transition. You and I don't know if you ever raced with Travis Firing or not.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
So you and Travis transitioned from Gold Cup to Manufacturers Cup. And honestly, when you did it, I said to myself, well, we'll see how this goes. This is going to be a big learning curve. And it was instant. You guys were competitive. You were winning races. I couldn't believe it. And what that taught me was what you just said, that in Gold Cup, in 4 cycles, you have to carry momentum, because you miss a corner, it may take you the rest of the race to make up what you lost, let alone gain anything. So you learn to carry that momentum. So when you get into 2 cycles, you're hitting the corners faster, you're going down the straightaways faster. It's instinctive that you carry that momentum, which makes you a better driver probably than some guys that have been racing 2 cycles their whole career, because they haven't learned to maintain that that flow, that momentum, like you did in 4 cycles, and it was obvious. I mean, I'll tell you, it was instant, and it was really impressive.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it was a great memory doing it, and met a lot of great people. Certainly, and that was my start to, like I said, Tony Kart. Right, I was working with John Marchioni.
John Marchioni,
yeah, he was the importer for Tony Kart.
Big supporter of WKA.
Yeah, absolutely. And I worked with him through the rest of my career. In different areas, and in the Barbadage Pro Series, he was kind of my strategist that came with me to races and called my races. And I worked with him in Grand Am, and worked with him at when I was at Mazda and IMSA, a DPI program.
Yeah.
It's awesome how in this industry, those relationships, they matter. They can carry on, and it's all about the people that you work with.
So just a little backstory, Xander. When I was reaching out, Ryan's one of the first people I thought of that we got to get on a podcast. But getting a hold of these rock stars isn't as easy as it sounds, right? And I had no contact information for Ryan. What the heck? So I did AI. How do I reach Ryan Hunter-Reay? Well, really? The best way is his website director. So I emailed the guy that manages your website. Hey, I introduced myself, who I was, how I knew you. Man, if there's any way I could reach out to Ryan, right? So he obviously must have said something to you, because and I'm thinking I'll never hear from this guy. In like 2 days, he gets back to me. Hey, I talked to Ryan. Absolutely. Here's his email. Here's his number. Thinking, boy, I hope he did talk to Ryan, because I got the goods now. And then the next step was, okay, I'm thinking, he's a busy guy, man. And I'm going to email him, and I'm going to call him. I'll never hear from him. Emailed him, got a response. He says, give me a call. I called him, and I don't know if I got you, but like 2 days later, you called me back. So that, to me, you talk about relationships, and certainly not to the extent you had with John, but that tells me that we had something back in the day. And you do remember that. And it just meant so much to me that you did that. And I want to dig a little bit into the Gold Cup, because when I think of the Gold Cup, there was a lot of tracks that were different in their own right. I know you had Charlotte, which was kind of, at that point in time, kind of a nouveau track. I mean, it's not like the Lansings and the Circlevilles and the Camdens. But other than Charlotte, what track sticks out in your mind as being unique, challenging, your favorite, you hated it? Just something of the places we went to, you saw, oh, man, I love that track, or I hated going there.
Well, first, Randy, back to what you were saying about, Jean, about reaching out to me and my relationship with Marchioni and all that stuff. I mean, you ran WK at that point when I was, at my peak of national championship competition, and you were just a fantastic ambassador for the sport. If we had somebody that mismanaged it, WKA, I mean, at the time, the numbers and that time frame, the amount of karts in each race, the steamroll that was going at the time was because of the work you put in. If it was mismanaged, we would have never even got to the point where there was a karting scholarship in Skip Barber.
Well, thank you.
There was, that was really the spark that ignited my career. So I appreciate that a lot. I mean, I've seen many different series. I've seen many different teams. All of us have. They could be easily mismanaged, and that train can come off the track real quick. So fantastic job there. And on the my favorite tracks deal, I'll just never forget the Grand Nationals being at like Jacksonville, the winter, that winter deal. And as a kid, it's cold, it's gray, and there's just a massive amount of people there, massive amount of cars. It's like no other race you've ever seen. And
let me just interrupt. And the straightaway looks to be like a mile long to a kid, right?
I mean, more. Yeah. And if you look down where the straightaway starts, and there's that massive banking deal, and you see
right,
all the cars coming around for the start.
Yeah.
And they're all going through there nose to tail, and you see all the smoke coming off of them, right? I mean, as a kid, that's either, I don't care who it is. You look at that, and you're like, oh, this is.
Did you ever have any races at Jacksonville where you were one of those kids at the back where the smoke was so big you couldn't see the front couple rows?
Oh, yeah. I've been all over the place at Jacksonville for sure. I've been up front and been taken out in that first corner so many times. I mean, but I remember that as like the most, I guess I had a lot of respect for it, but the most daunting, especially when I first got there, just the whole atmosphere of the thing. I mean, it was intense. Just everything was, this is it. Like, this is the big show. And that track did seem like I said, it just seemed absolutely massive. Like you said, it looked like that front straight was a mile, or that straight was a mile. And the drafting that was happening there, the bump drafting, the strategy that you'd have to have with other guys. And it was so easy to dump somebody in that, coming off that long straight and that little flick left. And a lot of lessons learned there. But I really enjoyed Jacksonville. That place was like no other, because you had so many bank corners too. You'd come by the pit, the pit there, and a bank, and you go around to the big, bowl, and that was banked. And it was just unlike anything that we ever kind of went to the rest of the year. But it was just always cold. It just always seemed gray, and it just always seemed like Judgment Day there. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Just a great atmosphere, great racing. And I definitely will never forget that. Some of the best memories were at Jacksonville, I think. And then, boy, I mean, yeah, like you said, Circleville was really cool at the time. Charlotte, to me, when I first got there, was that was awesome. Coming out of like Naples and Sarasota and these tracks, and you go to Charlotte. And then I got to Charlotte like in 2006. I was testing a Xfinity car, and I remember looking at that track, the go-kart track, and it was tiny, and I couldn't believe it. To me, it was this this first class premier big kart track, and it was small. But to me, when I was racing it, I remember that like it was yesterday. It was a really cool, really good racetrack.
Yeah, for sure. When you think of your Gold Cup days, who were your toughest competitors?
Oh boy, there were a lot. I mean, John Rufner, my kind of like my teammate at the time. He'd win national championships as well. And we were racing every weekend in Naples and Sarasota, and that's, I think, what kind of groomed us to being the racers we were, because we were pounding on each other every weekend locally.
Right.
And we'd go race nationally and go win national races. But and there were so many. I would have to say Rufner was definitely a big one, and like at times, like in juniors, like Ronnie Silk, super tough. Even the Oceanbachs, when they came in, they were strong. I was kind of on the way out of Gold Cup at the time, but I could tell that was the next surge coming through. They were very strong, and there was just a lot of really good kart racers from. Were you
racing against John Strom when he had that run with Margay?
No.
Yeah, he won. No. He won a Triple Crown, but he was racing Gold Cup and Manufacturers Cup. He won like 7 classes one year.
Wow.
In the combination. He was just on rails with the Margay, and first time they had really stepped into Gold Cup, and then they started winning races with John. But so how many years did you run Gold Cup roughly?
I think it was 3. I believe.
What possessed you? Was it your decision, your dad's? Were you approached by Jean Marchoni? What possessed you to transition from Gold Cup to Manufacturers Cup?
The Rufners were doing some 2-cycle stuff locally, right? So at those local races at Naples and Sarasota, when I was running with those guys in the 4-cycle, he was also complementing that with running in the 2-cycle. And his dad was saying, there's certain things to this, the speed aspect of it, just going faster and dealing with that closing rate and the passes have to be quicker and more precise potentially. Your brake zones are shorter. That kind of, I think, spurred it on. But then one thing led to another. We started talking to Marchioni about it. I had success in Gold Cup. It's like, hey, come on over, try this. And I'll never forget showing up to the track, seeing that green go-kart for the first time and a 2-cycle engine on. It was like a alien, craft, because I had been doing from the 4-cycle Gold Cup stuff with these carts with these massive cowlings on them. The way they sounded, the way they smelt, everything was completely different. So it was definitely a sensory overload at the time. And but those are great. Those are great for a karter, for anybody. Go drive things go drive anything. You're going to take little bits out of that different experience,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to put that into your toolbox. You're going to use that later. That's why I always love racing IMSA, Grand Am. I've raced GT cars. I've raced, a whole lot of different stuff, and there are different lessons that can be applied to any race car that you've learned along the way, and that was part of it, transitioning to 2-cycle.
How much seat time did you have in the 2-cycle before you ran your first national?
I'd like to say none.
Just
it was
practice, right?
Right.
Practice at the event. Wow.
Yeah. Showed up to Charlotte, and that's where it was. And that the kart was there.
I mean, what kind of an adjustment was that when you got on the track for the first few laps?
A big, I remember excuse my language, my ass tickling so bad because of the revs. And I'd never had anything like that. It was like, it got to a certain rev range and it was like almost uncomfortable. I wanted to put like padding in because of the harmony, the frequency of the vibration.
Yeah.
With that fiberglass seat was so much different. Yeah. That was wild, but it was just really, it was the outright speed of it, right? Once you got the thing up and its power band, and once it really started cranking, that's where the 4-cycle, the 4-cycle was almost like a linear climb. Whereas the 2-cycle would do this like straight, it would go. And that was, at first it was like, oh my God, what did I get myself at?
Well, it's probably jarring, right? Like, I think, of when people talk about like the adrenaline of driving or going fast or racing, I always think about like the butterflies in the stomach feeling when you go to like a faster vehicle than you've ever like raced before. And I can still think back of like the first time I moved in from clone engines that were then replaced by 206s, but what had, been the last era of Gold Cup to even just Yamaha KT100, and then to like the first time in like an X30. And just that little bit at the end of the straightaway, we're like, whoa, like I'm going a lot faster than, what I'm used to. And after you get that like feeling like once or twice, you almost kind of miss it. At first it's like a fear thing because you're uncomfortable, right? And then after that, that's almost like a drug feeling, right? Of just
absolutely
like,
right.
I want to go faster now. That was
where's
amazing.
The line for that feeling? Because I'll get in line. I want that. That is the best feeling. Absolutely. That is it. You're right. I mean, it's that little bit and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going that much faster. What I'm doing is going to have bigger consequences, right? If I screw this up, or if I don't make a pass at the right time, or if I stove it in on somebody and it doesn't work out, you're going a lot quicker. And that continues on, through cars as well. No doubt about it. I mean, I'll never forget like the first time I was in a champ car, which is an IndyCar at like Fontana. And that was just completely eye-opening. Like, we're doing 240, and it was just unlike, I had never really been on a super speedway that fast. And that's that kind of same feeling. You almost think at one point you're like, is this right? Is this smart? No. Okay. Yeah, we're doing it. Just keep the foot on there, keep the foot on the floor. And then it becomes, and then you gradually get more and more used to it.
So did you ever run the 2-cycle at Jacksonville in Manufacturers Cup?
Yes, I believe I did one year. Yeah.
How was the straightaway on that?
That was awesome.
Yeah.
And that's where there was more smoke, that smoke we were talking about going through
yeah, right, exactly.
Those 2 cycles, man, when they're crawling, getting ready to come to the start, it's just a massive amount of that smoke and the sound and everything else. But yeah, it was I can't remember how we did on that one. You remember, like, it was such a crapshoot almost, like, because you draw starting positions, right? There would be, race 1, race 2, final, whatever it was, and if you drew in kind of like that mid pack range, for both races, because they'd flip it, you really could never get your way to the front, right? Whereas at least if you drew one where you're at the back and then one at the front, you can get your way to the front, have a good finish. So I remember that, but yeah, Jacksonville was always something else, let alone my first time there in a 2-cycle.
So the history behind what Ryan's talking about with the P-pick, there was a time pre-Ryan Hunter-Reay where the Manufacturers Cup didn't even exist. We had a 2-cycle national program and it was struggling. It was almost gone. And so my dad and I said, we got to do something here. So I said, well, we need some identity on this series, and we need to make it. I always use Lynn Haddock as the example. I said, we got to make it fair for everybody. So somebody that goes there has to have a feeling that somewhere down the road, Lynn Haddock has to pass them. They're going to be in front of them. I said, and you know, we're talking about it back then, 10, 15 karts in a class. I said, let's do a P-pick. So we did that. And it did. The result was it got more people thinking, even though the cream always rises to the top, that they had, you know, an equal chance.
Right.
Well, this thing starts snowballing. And I always remember this one story in South Bend, and you probably raced South Bend in the Gold Cup, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So in South Bend, we've got one of the Yamaha classes, and it's got 30 karts in it. And South Bend's a really nice track, but it's an old school track. It's pretty tight.
Yes. Very.
And invariably, when we would have these big classes, the person drawing the number one would be somebody with limited experience. Now, what do? We didn't really have a screening. We should have, but we didn't have a screening. So, you know, they're going, hey, you know, this kid on the pole, you know, he's got 2 races under his belt. He's starting first. Kind of say, yeah, I don't know. What do we do? Well, of course, I think he spun in the first turn or something and wadded up some karts. And that transitioned into, maybe we should start qualifying with all these karts. So we did.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I think it established itself as a premier series. So people still wanted to come. But that's why we P-picked, because we had to grow the series and get an identity. And once we did, we realized, okay, that P-pick has served its course. We really need to get the fast racers to the front now. And that's what we started doing. But yeah,
absolutely.
I always felt like in some ways, the P-pick helped some drivers learn their craft a lot quicker than if they were fast and always started in the front.
And yeah. I think you have to start, you know, like Eric tried to do a couple P-pick races once or twice a year up at Trackhouse, the other club track he's got besides Homestead now, right? And the problem there, because Badger Kart Club still does them, a couple kart clubs will still do them. If you don't like start your, I guess, club culture that way, you've got like 2 to 3 years of teething pains, because even the fast guys are reckless at the club level because they're used to just qualifying pole, driving away, starting the pre-final on pole, driving away, and like not passing anybody. And like I can attest to that too, when because my club was Barnesville. Atlanta Motorsports Park hadn't been built until I had already gotten into seniors, and that was actually my first and only ever job. I like filled out a job application and went to work for. So at Barnesville, you know, for one, the field separation was decent. The club numbers were kind of small, but also it's a tight track that's really tricky to pass on. So I think made maybe 1 or 2 passes, but never any like a proper one where you're right behind someone, you wait for them to break, then you pop out, and then you break later, and then we get alongside them. So then I go to Daytona for what was really my first national, and I would like pull alongside somebody, and then I would break at my normal mark, and then they would turn in, and I would go, why am I not like getting by them like the rest of these guys? And how does this, you know, even work? And so had made it to, and at the time, the Southeast didn't have as big of a Florida program. There wasn't a Southeast regional, right? This is going to be era of 2013, 2012, 2014. So off the back of a lull that karting hit, my generation was the generation that would have been in Kid Carter Cadet during the recession, right? So it was a smaller age group. But to get to a big race and just not know how to pass or like have any racecraft. And had we done pill picks, especially at a track like that more frequently or other tracks, then that would have, you know, developed along with it. And that was Randy. I had went over to, I think I told you, Randy, I went over to PFI a couple weeks ago for Kart Masters, which is like the UK's Super Nationals or kind of Miami Grands. It's their big one-off, non-points, non-British championship race. And that was the only time I'd been over there. And PFI is like their marquee racetrack. And what was so interesting was, you know, we've had enough of those guys come over now racing our American races that, you know, I knew a handful of them and was kind of able to talk to some people about the differences to it, because the population density in the UK is so tight and all the tracks are so close that the midfield and even back of the pack field guys that are a bit off the pace or a bit fresher, they're like lap time development, just like you were saying, Ryan, about everyone that comes and tests 3 days a week at Homestead, was in parallel with their racecraft development, because their club races were still seeing a lot of the same people are 20 or 30 deep, and they were racing more often, and the field would get jumbled up. They would do different formats with inverts and pill picks just because they were trying to mix things up, because they'd run the same tracks and it'd be the same 30 kart field, but they'd see each other more often. And so I'm fully with both of you guys. Like the pill pick idea, at a certain point, you can't really have it anymore if a series gets to an elite level and you're like, all right, there's a lot on the line and the field's close and the qualifying, it's not the same guy getting pole anymore. But it's a scary adjustment when you try to do it at a club race, and the kid that goes to pole or front row, as it's his first ever race or like second ever race, and the rookie stripe era is like over, and like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is going to be sketchy, you know?
No doubt about it. It has a direct correlation to your racecraft, and building those skills.
So there's a method to this next question I have, but because I'm going to loop back to it later on in the podcast as we move through your career. But what was your feelings emotionally, physically, your first national where you're starting on the pole, you're going to start your first race, and you obviously feel like, hey, I'm one of the guys can win this thing. You're on the grid, getting ready to fire up. What are you feeling?
Kind of the same feelings I felt when you're on the pole in an IndyCar.
Well, that was my other question, so you answered it for me. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's when you learn to really compartmentalize your emotions and your thoughts, and kind of channel the energy in the most beneficial direction possible.
Yeah.
Like you could be on the pole, and you can let your mind. There's one guy over here. There's one guy over here. You can let your mind listen to this one that's saying, dude, if you mess this up, if you go off in that first corner, if you brake too late, if you do this wrong, or if you do, and then you just got to shut that one up. And then the other side is, you've got to drive the way that you did to get you where you are in this position at the front of the field, which is driving kind of free, right? Just driving in that area where you're not overthinking things in a natural state. And the same thing kind of goes with the same feeling in the wet, right? And when it rains, especially in Indy cars and the bigger, heavier cars, there's such a fine line between getting a corner right and it just turning around and boom, you yard sailed the thing and you're on the front of racer or whatever it is, or that day, and how you crash. So it is a very fine line, but you've got to have the right internal thoughts going, and you cannot. And I tell my kids this all the time: you can start your day, or you can walk up to a football game, and you could see the other side is bigger than you. They look like they're potentially more prepared. Their plays, this, that, and the other, and you can go into the game thinking, we are going to lose this thing, or we're going to do this, or oh man, I can't throw an interception because these corners or the safeties are so big. Just just go out and do what you do that got you, to the point where you are, the wins that you've had, believe in yourself, and you got to get in that spot. And that's what it kind of taught me over the years was you're just natural human nature. You're going to have those internal thoughts, and some of them are going to be negative, and you just have to learn over your career you can take them into account. You don't want to go drive off the first corner. That's absolutely right. But at the same time, you have to learn how to kind of compartmentalize them and put certain thoughts in priority.
Right. So as we kind of wind down your karting career and we're moving into bigger cars and transitioning up the ladder, I'm curious, how were you introduced to John Marchionne?
Oh man, at the time, that's a great question. I don't remember because my dad made contact with him. I think my dad reached out to him knowing he's the importer for Tony Kart.
Okay.
Tony Kart at the time was doing really well. I think Danica Patrick was in the
She
car.
was. Mm-hmm.
Right at the time.
He had Phil Giebler racing Tony Karts.
Phil Giebler, yeah. And I was
right.
I remember that first national. I was pit right there with Danica.
Yeah.
And we got on really well, became friends, and I think that's kind of how it started. Yeah, I think my dad just reached out to him and was like, "Listen, this kid's done this, this, and this, and Gold Cup, and I feel like he's got the chance or the shot to do well. Just give him a shot." It didn't start as like, "Hey, here's your full season, ride. You're officially a JM Tony Kart driver." It started off, I would say, very, very much as almost a tryout, and then that tryout phase ended pretty quick.
So to give you an idea, Xander, about John Marchionne and his team, it was called JM Racing, right?
Yep.
So back in the day, we had the Constructors Series. I don't think you ran the Constructors Series, did you, Ryan? I don't believe.
No.
So John was a big supporter of the Constructors Series, and this was his stable of drivers: Danica Patrick, Bobby Orgel, and Alex Barron. Not too shabby.
Yeah. No, that's a lineup.
Yeah,
That's a
that was
lineup
his
for
last
sure.
drivers for the
Yeah.
Constructor Series.
Yeah.
Little did we know those three would do moving on in bigger cars.
That was Formula A, right?
That was Formula A. Yes, that was
Yeah,
Formula A.
those things were pretty bad to the bone.
Did you ever
They're
get to drive one of
awesome.
those things or any one of those direct drive like similar
I did,
ones?
yeah.
Yeah.
For a couple of years, I had one as a training kart here in South Florida, and just got done with the just got tired of the maintenance on it,
Yeah.
obviously. But man, it's so much fun. Those races were something else. So I remember kind of phasing my way out of karting, looking at Constructors Cup, like, man, that's pretty cool. Maybe that's like the pinnacle.
We had Danica, we had Sam Hornish, who, quite honestly, and obviously his record speaks for itself, but Sam never did that well in the Constructor Series.
Nope.
I'm not sure he ever podiumed, to tell you the truth. But as you said, Ryan, it takes time, and he developed, and obviously he found the groove. But Patrick Long won, I think, the second year of the Constructor Series. Or the first year he won it. He dominated in that. The list of Indy 500 drivers. Phil Giebler was in it. It was just amazing. It was a heck of a series. But so let's go through the year where you're transitioning. You're in karting, but now you're starting to get the opportunities of moving up into that next level. And I guess it would have been Skip Barber. Tell us about that.
Yeah, thankfully, I mean, my teammate that I told you about, John Rufner, right at the same time we were going into cars and are looking to make that transition. And they made the decision to go the route of like the privatized team route, which is Formula Ford at the time. Getting with a private team, and going and working a deal out to go run a car there. And I went the route of Skip Barber. I had done my 3-day school. I had maybe done a couple regional races, right, at Sebring and I don't know where the other one would have been, Sebring and maybe Homestead or something. I don't really remember, but that's when the karting scholarship came on, right? And they picked 16 of the top karters in the country, and we had a 3-day shootout.
Right.
Everything from they tested us in a whole bunch of stuff, off-track stuff, interviews.
Yeah.
Obviously the racing side, full on mock qualifying sessions, this, that, and the other. And I was fortunate enough to win one of those seats. I think there were 3 or 4 that were awarded.
Was that with Brian Sellers?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was the year after me. I think he won the karting scholarship.
Okay.
I was with Eric Jones. I should know this. Anyway, it was a huge break at the time, because we had really we'd exhausted a lot of the financials doing racing karts, and this gave us an opportunity to just go racing and in cars. And Skip Barber was great because it was as equal as you can get. There's always going to be that one kart. You get the next car, and wow, this one turns way better than the other one did. And you're like, you keep an eye on which cars are maybe the best ones, and you're hoping you get in there, and you're trying to lobby and trying to get in the ones that you want, that fit your driving style. But that's what really kickstarted it. And I raced in that. I raced in the regional series. I won I think I won 2 Skip Barber regional series, and then they had the Skip Barber National Championship, which is a one-off deal at Lime Rock on their biggest weekend. I think it's the Indy 500, I believe it's Memorial Day weekend. Won that. That was against Brian Sellers. He was racing that race, and some other karters. And then that kind of opened the door for me to go to the Skip Barber Big Scholarship, which was the Barber Dodge Pro Series.
Okay.
So and then went to that and won the Big Scholarship, and was able to get that. The key to that was now I'm racing on all the tracks. We're a support series for Kart IndyCar.
Okay.
Right? So now we're racing at Toronto. We're racing at all these street courses. We're racing at Road America. We're racing on the same weekend as IndyCar. That was just awesome to have to get time on these tracks and to learn street circuit racing, for the first time, really. So such a great series at the time, and that was a huge part of me learning and getting up to speed, especially on the street circuits. That was massive. So won the big scholarship. I think I finished like 4th in the championship. Just had too many DNFs, getting caught up and stuff. And from there, we were out of the scholarship or the Skip Barber funded system, and we didn't have money to continue on. Here's another big problem with racing. The higher up you get in the ladder system, the more expensive it gets. The more expensive it gets, you still are not having any ROI for a legit sponsor. So something has to get creative. There has to be some type of something that doesn't really make sense, right? In this case, I had to go out. I pitched quite a few folks in South Florida that I knew had the money, successful businessmen. And, I got an investor in my career, and that was basically, it was basically multi-million-dollar payment over 3 years to partially fund. In the first year in Formula Atlantic, it helped fund quite a bit of it. Second and third year, it was only partial funding. But then I had to pay back, 50% of everything I made until I got to a certain marker down the road. So, yeah, that was it was complex, but it allowed me to keep going. And that is another problem with racing that really weeds out some of the big talent. Is even if you're dominating in Skip Barber, whatever it is, in the lower levels, Indy Pro. If you don't have the money to go to the next level, or you can't find the funding, or you can't get creative to find the funding, it's game over.
I mean, you're one of many stories of doing exactly that, right? I mean, I'd say probably at least half your generation of even beyond your generation, we're doing exactly like what you just said, right? Selling percents of future earnings to be able to fund what you needed to fund now on the hope and premise that, it's going to pay off. And you see it still today, right? Like, guys will win 1 year, they'll be able to barely make the scholarship money, stretch out to run the next season. Then if they run second or third in the next rung up, then unfortunately that's it, right? Like, in your case, having that backing, but you said it wasn't all the funding you needed for Atlantic. So even after the first season of Atlantics, was there still like that habitual almost thing that racing drivers have to go through every December of, all right, now I got to get on the phones. Now I got to find a way to pull all this together again?
Yeah, no, it was all the funding in Atlantics, basically. It just wasn't like, the travel side of it and stuff like that, right? It funded the ride. And it was a great team. It was Hilton Motorsports. And we should have won the championship that year. Just hit the ground running. We were quick. We were quick everywhere. I remember even at like Long Beach, and that's when the big head game started with other drivers. And Joey Hand was a big, I was head to head with him basically every weekend. And being kids, that's where you learn. You'd get into it. You'd end up getting into it, and it would ruin your race. And points racing is a certain craft. And I was just running the thing ragged, driving at 110% all the time. I won quite a few races. I think I won 4 or something like that. But again, came up short of the championship because of the big, the goose eggs and the other races where we didn't end up finishing. But such a great series. Formula Atlantic that year was wild. I mean, it was like a constructors championship type of deal where it had replaced Indy Lights as the premier series, and it had everybody in it. Everyone. I mean, it was guys were coming over from Europe, from F3 for it. And it was just a phenomenal year. It was just wild. You had Dorcott racing in there. You had DSTP. You had Lynx. You had, Buddy Rice was in there. The name, I mean, if you looked at the entry list, I could go through it. I'm going to miss names because it was so long. But, man, it was just fantastic to race against those guys in that year. And those cars, it was the new Swift. And it was just, a special time for sure. But yeah, the next year, then it was partial funding of when I went to American Spirit, Team Johansson, new team with some owners that I had known from when I was doing coaching. I would coach in Ferrari Challenge here and there, at times when I was in Skip Barber. Jimmy Vassar ended up being my teammate. So he's like the man. He's the American dude at the time, and he ends up being my teammate. I'm first year, like totally wide eyed. And here's my teammate, Jimmy Vassar, which is really cool because he was always such a cool dude. Like such a calm demeanor. Like he never got excited. And that taught me a lot too. Being in the same room as him and how he interacted with people, how he dealt with race day mornings, how he let things roll off his back after a race. We're just racing cars, man. We're not curing cancer. Don't worry. We're going to go out next week and we're going to go out and do better. But that was big. And then I played for a partial part of that season, then a very much smaller portion of the next year. Well, I should back up. In American Spirit, finished third at Mid-Ohio. We were in the Reynard, which was inferior to the new Lola. So everybody else had Lolas. We were one of 4 Reynards on the grid. It was the 2 American Spirit cars, Walker Racing, and then Conquest. And I think Justin Wilson was in the Conquest, and Darren Manning in the Walker car, Jimmy Vassar, myself. We finished third at Mid-Ohio. The car was actually pretty good on really smooth, natural terrain road courses. So I started on the front row at one point. I think it was Portland. Started third, or the outside front row. I think I started outside front row at Mid-Ohio, which is a big deal, big shocker for everybody. And then finished third that weekend, which was, for us to podium in that series at the time in a Reynard was just unthinkable. And then won Australia, Surfers Paradise. That was one of those races that had everything. It was dry, it was wet, had a red flag. And it was a matter of just keeping it going as fast as you can, obviously, and keeping it between the walls. And I had a big shootout at the end with, of all people, Jimmy Vassar and Darren Manning, which was just incredible. Then the next year, that funding only helped a little portion of my time when I went to Ardez, which was my first year in the Lola. That was the year where we led every lap at Milwaukee, and that caught the eye of the big teams at that point. When what happened in Milwaukee, and Ganassi came calling at that time, and then that's when bad decisions were made. Remember the bad decisions you were talking about that the parents can make and taking the kid down the wrong road? Yeah, that happened next. So yeah, Ganassi came calling, and they wanted me to do a test. I was the lead shoe in there. Like I was kind of, as you would say, like on pole position for that seat for 2005 in the IRL, all oval racing. I'd always done road racing. I did well, obviously, in Milwaukee, racing ovals, but I wanted to continue on the road course racing side of it too. So I was, considering my options. And then the owners of Champ Car came and said, "Hey, we'll fully fund you. We got you. You're our guy. This is it. Champ Car's it." And so I had to end up calling. I had already done a seat fitting at Ganassi for a test with the guys. To lunch with the guys, with the crew at Ganassi. I had to end up calling Mike Hull. I'll never forget that. It's like I'm going to turn down Ganassi right now, but I've got one thing over here that's for sure I know is going to happen, which is the Champ Car side, fully funded season. I don't know specifics on it yet. They're telling me I might be in a four-side car. I don't really know. I might be in a KV car. And on the other side was the Ganassi deal. I know if I went and tested the car, I'd do well. It was at Phoenix. It was going to be at Phoenix. It was still an unknown, but those are the things you have to go for, right? You got to go with the Ganassi at that point. I did not. Went the Champ Car route. It was a disaster. They ended up just plucking me in a seat that met all the criteria of the deal, which was you're going to race in Champ Car. It's going to be funded, but huge mistake. That ended up leading to basically almost 2 years of no job. I was broke, completely broke, thinking about going back to school. I remember waking up I was sleeping at my mom's house in this little side apartment thing, and I remember looking at the ceiling like I had no money, zero money left, and it was like there was no option, nothing. And I got a chance to go out to California somehow. I went to Grand Prix Long Beach. And I remember going around to all the teams, and I'm like, "Listen, if you ever have a situation where you need somebody to step in, short time, do a good job, I'm your guy. I'll get it done." Doing that, just selling yourself, you never know when something might line up. And I had no idea. And you know, at the time, Jeff Simmons, who had done a great job in Skip Barber Dodge Pro Series, I think he dominated. But he went in the Rahal car. He had a hard time. He was crashing all the time, and they had to make a change. And Bobby Rahal, or Scott Repke, actually, out of the blue, who's the team manager, called me and said, "Hey, you available?" And this is after what, almost 2 full years, more than a year and a half of being out of the seat. And at my first race was, I had to show up and go race at Mid-Ohio. David Letterman showed up. I mean, it was like all the lights were on, you know, and it was my my tryout. So that's back to that, you know, you gotta take the opportunities, and you have to be put under pressure and learn how to perform in a short amount of time and not wad the car up and go fast. And that's what happened. And I got the job for the rest of the year, won Rookie of the Year. And it still wasn't straightforward from there. So I can continue going. I mean, it was
no, this
was wild.
This is great. But I think what's so interesting about it, right, is it's like there was another factor for your journey up in the early 2000s of trying to decide which side's going to win the IRL wars, right? And which side to hitch your wagon to. And was that the only time that really, like, you look back or in that decision of Champ Car versus Ganassi, or were there other decisions that you were like picking, again, Barber Dodge Pro, or going, you know, even obviously Skip Barber versus Formula Ford, right? You didn't go Indy Lights, you went Atlantics, of where you're trying to almost play the market of, okay, not only do we need to figure out what's the right team, what's the right situation, does this team have a path upwards that I could go up to, but also which of these sides is stronger? Was that kind of a lot of, because that's something the kids don't have to worry about now, right? At least they're just one Indy car.
Yeah, great question, man. Especially for somebody that wasn't there when it, you know, and I remember being in karting coming up, and Kart, IndyCar at the time was bigger than F1.
Right.
This is it. It's right here. I mean, there's a Miami Grand Prix in my backyard. I'm going to it. This is the coolest series ever. Street courses, you know, you put your fingers in the chain link fence and one of those freaking fire breathing dragons goes flying by you, and you're like, that's it. I mean, that's the coolest thing in the world. And that's what it always was that model was like, because I had come through Skip Barber Dodge, racing that same circuit. And it worked. It was working. The attendance figures were great. You go to Grand Prix of Long Beach, Toronto, all these things, packed, absolutely packed. And then over on the other side, you got the IRL, which is going, you know, in circles at these tracks in the middle of nowhere, and the attendance isn't very good. Big names are going over there though, because you got manufacturers going there because of Indy as the foundation. You got Ganassi going there, you got Penske going there, and at the time it was like, this product is working. I have to. That was another factor in my decision, was that I have to go in that direction. I have to continue in that direction because it's working. And you know, Champ Car, although on the business side they weren't doing so well, I think the events were doing really well, because we'd go to Denver Grand Prix packed. You know, all these big races dropped right in the middle of a city, and it's what I knew as well. I will say there was one side of it that the little inkling, the silver lining in the whole decision was that next year, the Ganassi had, I think, the Panos chassis, or was it the the G-Force? They crashed every weekend, all the time. I mean, some of the biggest wrecks you'll ever see in IRL history were that year, 2005. A lot of them were the Ganassi cars. I mean, I think Darren Manning got fired from the team that year. Briscoe broke his back. It was a nightmare season. So that right there could have ended my career too. I don't know. I have no idea. But long story short, Lifeline came from Rahal. And I'll never forget going into that shop and seeing, you know, a proper like real deal big time racing team shop, right? For almost, well, I saw the Ganassi deal, but this is after 2 years of sitting on the couch. And I remember they gave me the suit, and I went into their little bathroom in the lobby, and I put on the suit, and there's this freaking big Honda logo right here, and all these logos, and the thing's covered in logos with the ethanol deal. And I'm like, holy, this is it. I was like, I'll never forget that. Like, just being given that opportunity one last time, you know. And now at that point, IndyCar is almost half road courses again, right? They're in 2005, it was mostly ovals. They just started going to St. Pete, maybe 06. Maybe it was 05. Anyway, now more in my wheelhouse, right? I could go to these road courses. I could go compete on these road courses, go learn the ovals that I don't know. And did really well in 07 and then in 08, won at Watkins Glen. And here we are. Great relationship with ethanol, great relationship with Ray Hall. You know, all right, sky's the limit. We're taking off, right? No, it's like that flight that just keeps returning to the gate and telling you to deboard. Ethanol went to NASCAR on a NASCAR deal. Ray Hall's out of money. Sorry, bud. We're out. We're done. I didn't have a ride again for the next season after winning the previous year. Get all the way till like March. I think it was like early March. You know, when teams are testing at Sebring right before St. Pete, might have been super late February. And Tony George calls me up and, you know, we want to keep you in the series. It's not right that you're, you know, that you might not be here. And I had been working a lot of different angles too. I mean, it wasn't just as simple as Tony calling me up and saying it, but they gave me an opportunity at Vision. It was kind of a race by race basis just to keep me in there, right? And St. Pete in our first race, we finished third. Might have almost, you know, racing drivers when they say should have won the race, but yeah, it's one of those. Finished third. Might have been second. Anyway, I don't really recall those because it's not a win, but just kept pushing. Went to the Indy 500. Absolute nightmare. Barely made the race. I was out of the race when I pulled out of pit lane to go out for my final qual run. The gun's in the air. As I left, I'm out of the race at that point.
Did you hear the gun when you were in the car? Like
No.
as you were pulling away?
I just watched the video after, but I knew we were the last run. We were out of the race. My average was not going to make the race until the last half of the last lap. Indy's such a crazy place. I don't know if I got the right wind on the back straight, but we were so trimmed out. I remember looking in the mirror. And here's the thing at Indy. The car's going to go fast. If it's going to go fast, it's going to go fast. You're going to get a certain point of trim. It's not going to do it. That's not the answer. When you're like 4 degrees less than anybody else out there, that's not the answer. But you got to do what you got to do to go faster to try and make the race. And I remember looking in the mirror, and usually the wing, if you're looking in the mirrors, you know, got nose down to it in racing and stuff like that. This thing is like this. I'm looking at the bottom side. You could put a sponsor on the bottom of it. I could read the thing. It was unreal. And it was so light. It was such a hairy run. And yeah, we made it by like hundredths of a mile an hour on that last lap, made the race. That was it. Program over, done. I actually went to New York earlier in the month and begged Izod, who was my personal sponsor at Ray Hall. Personal sponsor being, you know, on my helmet. Begged them for some funding. They funded the Indy 500 because we weren't even going to be able to do that. Then Vitor Mira got hurt at AJ Foyt Racing in the Indy 500. I then filled his seat. Got to drive for AJ Foyt, which was, I'll never forget it, one of the most amazing experiences. Just absolute raw. I mean, he'd go to the car before a session and I'd see him turning in the front wing and turning things. And I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, you tell me what I'm doing once you go out there. Okay. Wild. He was just awesome. And when I would complain on the radio at times, he'd make fun of me, you know. It was straight out of Days of Thunder at times. Like the stuff he would say on the radio was just unreal. I was like, the rears. At the time, I remember we were at Richmond, which is like you're basically racing a cereal bowl. And I remember being like, you know, he's like, tell me about the car. I was like, I'm loose, this, that, and the other. He goes, well, you don't look too loose. You're still going. And say something. I go, it's nervous. It's nervous. He goes, son, what do you want me to? You want me to give you medication? You want to pit for an Advil, or what do you want to do here? Say stuff like that. It was just wild. But I'll never forget it. And he is the man. He is such a badass, but he's got such a heart. My mom was dying of cancer in Houston. She was at MD Anderson. They told her, you're at a position where you cannot fly on a plane. And her only wish was to just go home, just for the last, weeks of her life or whatever it was. And he heard me on the phone or whatever, and he said, "What's going on? What? No, Called up, told his pilots, get your ass over here, get the plane over here. Flew my mom home from Texas, and I went with her. But just to have that opportunity to be at home and not die in a hospital, just forever be grateful for that. So then after that was Foyt. That was 2009. No ride again. Whole off season. John Lopes, who was at Andretti, was like a good friend of ours. Kind of knew him from the Kart days. He was at Champ Kart or at Kart. He kind of lobbied Michael, "Hey, give this kid a shot. Just give him a shot. Give him a shot." I had a 3-race deal: Brazil, Long Beach, St. Pete, I think. First race, St. Pete, or whatever it was. Maybe it was the first race. Brazil was the one. I think Brazil was the first race of the season. Qualified on the front row, pole, I think, and finished second in that race. Long Beach was my third race. Qualified up front on that one again, and won the race. And that was it. Turned into a whole season long deal, and that was the beginning of my almost 13 years at Andretti. So nothing came easy, man. Everything was like, you got an opportunity with one of the biggest teams in racing, and it's going to be a tryout for you, and that's kind of how it goes. That's all you can ask for, right? I mean, you're never going to be given those big ones. It's like, all right, here's your full 2-year contract, bud. We don't know if you can do the job.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, for even the 13 years at Andretti, I think every kid or family, they look at like, well, once I get here, once I've made it, right, then everything, I'm comfortable, but I mean, even at Andretti, I'm sure was there ever a period where you're like, I'm an IndyCar driver, things are okay, I'm gonna be here, in the middle of maybe a 2 or 3 year deal at best, or does it always kind of feel like that little tenseness, I guess, of, well, this could go away like that?
Having that feeling, though, that you're talking about is a good thing. You never the 3-year deals that are fat are, I don't want to say they're not good, but they're just not conducive to that little bit of fire in the furnace that you need all the time. Like, I'm at a risk of losing this deal if I don't, pop one off here. And that's, I hate to say it, it's the truth. And that's how my whole career was. So I always had that. I almost had a complex about it. Will Power is the same way. We were talking about it. We always have that complex. Like, someone's going to come in and rob our job. Someone's going to come in and get this thing. You got to do it. You got to shove it down everybody's throat. Be better than them. Continue to work on yourself and not get complacent, and continue to just progress. Even when you're winning races, there's another guy who's working a little bit harder over there that's going to figure out what you did, why you're doing it, your shift points, this, that, and the other. Your what you're running for setup, because of the revolving door in IndyCar with engineers and all this stuff. What was magic in one year, the next year, that one of those engineers could have bailed to another team. Guess what? 3 other cars now have the setup that you have. So you just always got to kind of be like, I can't just go to a track. I won this track last year. I'm just going to show up. Just going to do what I did last year. You got to go that next step always. And that's how racing is. It's always developing. But my whole career, most of my career was always like that. It was always that. I think I had a 2-year deal. I might have had a 3-year deal at Andretti towards the end, but 2-year deals were big for me. 1-year deals were always what it was. So when I got a 2-year deal, that felt like that felt like the ride, man. That was it. And once I established with Andretti that I was I was also a big component in turning their team around. They had come from that's what got me the ride too. They had come from a span of like 2 years where they weren't doing well. They weren't doing well on road and street courses. They weren't doing well on ovals. And I came in and kind of started from scratch on a completely different setup, testing prior to the season in 2010. And I was working with Tony Kanaan, especially in the early days, and Marco. Those were I was a big component in completely turning the ideology of the street course setup and the road course setup around with them. And that also had some staying power. And then in 2011, we won at New Hampshire, won somewhere else, I believe, too. But the big opportunity came in 2012 when we're starting all over with the new car, clean sheet. That's the best. I love that. When you can start with a new car and everybody's on a new car, you don't have all these powerhouse teams that have done years of development and have spent millions and tens of millions of dollars on wind tunnel testing and all this other stuff. That's the time to strike, and that's what we did. We just had such a phenomenal year in 2012 in that DW12. Dan Weldon was supposed to be my teammate that year, and he and Vegas in 2011 at the last race, that whole thing happened. That was just a horrible situation. But yeah, the car was named after him, obviously, and did him proud when I won it. And I just remember having to learn that car. It felt so much lighter than the previous car. I love that. It was much more aero dependent, and we were always finding new things. That's the great thing about a year one car, is that you're on the run during a racing season, developing it as you go. Even though you've done the preseason testing, you're just developing as you go. And yeah, that was in my wheelhouse for sure.
Let me tell you my observation of your story here. Have you ever counted how many times you had a chance to give up and do something else?
Oh yeah, there's too many of them.
I mean, yeah, and I mean that in the most positive way, Ryan. But I've never heard the details of this story before. But how many times you talked about laying in bed at your mom's house, looking at the ceiling, on what am I going to do with my life? And you didn't give up because somehow you knew you had that drive and that ability in motorsports. That is a real testimony to desire and commitment and the will to succeed. That happened to you more than once, and you never gave up, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, and it's a lot of people along the way got to help you. You can't do it by yourself. And even at a time when I didn't have a job, 2006, I've got to thank my brother-in-law, who is my brother-in-law now, Robbie Gordon, for just keeping me around. I was just staying at his house in Charlotte, going to NASCAR races, and I was talking to everybody I possibly could. There's nothing fun about doing that. Walking around a paddock, people don't know you. You're an open wheel guy, right? And walking around trying to get an opportunity. So tough, and taught me a lot. I had to dig deep there, but I met some great people there. I met Doug Ducard from Hendrick. I met Alba Colon from GM. They nominated me to be a part of the GM driver development program in 2006, which was basically a shootout for a bunch of kids coming up through late models and stuff like that. And we just had different shootouts. We had one at like Caraway, which is a little short track in North Carolina, in a what is now an Xfinity car. We had one on a dirt track in a super late model. Wild stuff. And we had one at Nashville in an Xfinity car. And I remember showing up the Nashville deal. I'm in my borrowed truck, my what is Robbie Gordon's truck, because he let me use it to go drive to Nashville. I get there. Here comes Joey Logano in a helicopter to this test. And from there, he took off to go test the Home Depot Cup car in Michigan. I was like, how is this a fair shootout? It was crazy. But yeah, just great times. And those times are like really what made even more. It just made me have that fire more than a lot of other guys. The end of a race, when I get down to it, and I'm racing two other guys who had an easy time getting there. They're talented, had an easy time getting there. Yeah, at the time, I'm coming by because I worked way harder for this than you guys did, and I'm not letting you. You know what I mean? It was that feeling in me naturally all the time because of those tough times. But the tough times can also kill a racing career too. So it worked out. But yeah, you're right. There was a lot of times when probably would have been the better decision would be to just go do something else.
Well, we've got to talk about the magic of being the Indy 500 champion.
Yeah. That was in 13. Keep in mind, I paid my dues at Indy prior to that. I had already not almost won the race. I went to a last row party in 09. In 11, we qualified at Indy. Just so you know, here's a quick one for all you viewers out there who really don't know how Indy qualifying works. Through the day, the temperature comes up, comes back down. Wind could change also. You have to go out numerous times in the day to get a run in to know if because it could go faster, right? The hotter it gets, the lighter the air is. The hotter the track temp, you might slide around a little bit. Air's lighter, you go faster in a straight line. So, but you have to get out there to do it. Back then in 11, you had to pull your time in order to go back out. Now you don't have to do that. Now you can just go back out, log another time. in 11, I put in a good time, or a decent time at the time, at that time of the day, I should say. And we just sat on it. And as the day went, it got faster and faster and faster. Line started building. The line where you pull your time to go out started getting bigger and bigger, longer and longer. And we just watched it happen. We just watched our own demise happen in front of us. Just car after car going faster. Line was too long by the time we got in it. Never got another run. We were bumped out of the race. So I put my dues in by that time. And in 2013, I was leading the race with 4 or 5 laps to go. It was yellow. Maybe it was a few more than that, but I was leading. I knew I was going to be passed. Sitting duck at Indy, you're going to be passed.
Yeah.
So I figured Kanaan would pass me, and I almost wanted that to happen in the one so that I could have a run and get back by him. We go through one. Dario Franchitti crashes. Yellow flag. Checker. Done. Where's all no red flags. Well, next year, 2014. Just had an amazing race car. I remember on carb day, I had chills going up my back during that practice. I think it was only a half-hour practice at the time because I was just knifing through people. I mean, the thing was just doing everything I wanted it to. It was wild. I was like, oh my God, this car is amazing. We were starting 19th. It wasn't a fast car. It wasn't a fast qualifier. So started 19th. By the halfway point, I'm leading the race, fighting with these guys, fighting with Elio at the end. And there's a big crash. I think it was Ray Hall. And I'm like, cool. What'd they do last time? Yellow flag, right? I'm just going to kind of parade around until the checker comes out. I'm home free. This is awesome. No, red flag. Come in. You never know if the car is going to restart after running for 2.5 hours already, right? With just the heat soak and everything else. And it was the first time that ever happened. And it was, wow, man, for the pressure to sink in. Like that pressure we were talking about earlier, just sitting there. It's quiet. There's 7 laps to go in the Indy 500. I'm the leader. And I'm just in my own head at that point. And wow, I had to go out and it was like a sudden death overtime shootout, right? And it just it amped up the level of desperation. That was in hindsight, if I hadn't won it, I wouldn't think it was cool. But in hindsight, that was really cool about that race. It was like a sudden death overtime shootout. And man, we went for broke. Elio and I, we did stuff that I didn't even know if the car was going to stick. We were turning in from the bottom of the racetrack.
Right.
We had trimmed already. We had trimmed through the race. We had trimmed down the rear wing. So I had way less downforce than I had earlier in the race. And just doing stuff that was absolute hero to zero stuff. One of those moves gone wrong, you're a complete zero, right? You're at the front. You take a huge risk like that, you end up at the wall. People are going to laugh you out of there. And that's a kind of a lesson in life and in racing. You got to take the risk to get that huge reward. Because there were some of those. The one that I was coming up on Elio and I almost went in the grass. My plan was to do a fake high, then go low. The draft came a little quicker than I anticipated. So I had to make that fake a little bit quicker. And when I did it, we looked in the data after, and the rear tires actually spun.
Ooh.
Doing 220. So super, just a super cool time. Shoot, I need a water. 1 second.
Yeah, no, you're good. That's both the big wins and moments. I feel like as a driver are easy to remember, but as cheesy as what like the F1 movie was kind of talking about, right? There's that point where you have a couple races you look back and you were in flow state almost from green to checker, where it just felt like you were one with the car and you could do no wrong, and you almost can't even describe it, right? There's one or two go-kart sessions I can think back of where I almost look back and I don't recognize myself a little bit because it was just I was just driving. There was no almost thought to it. There was just that couple, just for that moment in time, it was fully natural, not just I'm pretty good or I'm thinking a little bit or are there races like that come to mind when you look back on your IndyCar career that stick out and you're like, I don't know what it was that day, but once we went green, it was just I could do no wrong. I could put the car in no bad place.
I mean, that's a great point. That's that zone they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
The funny thing is you mentioned that after the race, people were talking to me. I remembered a few of the moves in that final last bit, right? That final shootout over 7 laps. I remember the big ones, the big moves and the big moments. Maybe there was like 3 of them. Had zero recollection
Yeah.
of the rest of it.
Yeah.
None. I had to watch the video again for it to come back, because I was operating in a place where I was not banking memory at the time. Like it was wild. That was the most extreme case I've ever had of that. There are other times when, yeah, I wasn't thinking. I was just operating on pure instinct and ability, like you're talking about. But that 500 one was the biggest one. I was like, it's like I had hit my head wild, that I could not recall when I got out of the car, like my engineer's talking to me about this. What were you thinking when you kind of popped outside here and then moved down here? And I was like, I don't know. I have to watch the video. I don't know what, I really actually did not recall 90% of that last 7 laps.
Yeah. Isn't that
I
so
do
wild?
remember,
Like,
I was standing up in the car, pushing the throttle so hard, my rear end was not touching the seat. And my leg was, it was literally standing in the car. And I had bent the throttle stop.
with how hard you were pressing.
That's how hard I was pressing it. That's how bad I wanted it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But great point, Xander, because it doesn't come along often. You can be super talented, super successful.
Yeah.
And very rarely you get into those moments where it's just it's on another level.
Yeah, I like to think of it like flow state almost. Like like I said, I think there's only maybe a couple races where I can think back, and I never got to race too much. My years were always really partial schedule for a variety of different reasons. Part of it was our budget was pretty club size, but our club numbers were dwindling, and there wasn't a regional or divisional level above that. So my path was, do a couple of national races a year. And then, I wanted to be around it more. So that led to me announcing at my local club races at 13 or 14 or 15, and then getting a Gold Cup opportunity at 15, a Man Cup opportunity to announce. And then that led to doing a lot of that. And then, like I said, my first job was at AMP. I started supposed to be just a flagger. And then I went in, and the first day, Jeremy Porter, the CEO, pulled me in the office, and he realized that I was a go-karter. So he's like, no, I want this kid to be on pit lane, selling our karting schools. I didn't understand at the time that where their pit lane steward was really like their shift lead. So my first day at work on my first ever job at 16 years old, I'm supposed to be like somewhat of a manager, and I handled it all wrong. I did every mistake in the book. And, there was, just had no idea. And looking back, and they pulled me away from it, then went back to it. But between that and the commentary, and then eventually, I think around 6 or 7 months in, so I'm maybe 17 now. They had me, I wrote the whole rule book and had me organizing the club races for the karting and the Miata series. And that's what led me down to South Florida, because Eric had come down a couple of times and seen me, organizing these club races. And I would talk to him when I'd go up to announce at Trackhouse. It was about everything karting related, or running the races, or the sport, or whatever. And so I'm 18, and he gives me the call of, I'm working through school early to get my bachelor's in business. And my parents were just happy that I finished. They're like, however you finish, whatever you want to do, that's fine. And so I was able to finish online, because I'm still only 18 when I moved down to Homestead, and then worked there for 3 years.
Wow.
But, in those couple of races, right? Like just that, you just can't describe it. I even, like you said, like kind of you almost black out from the adrenaline and instinct, and it's just so hard to describe, right? Like the fact that you can't remember, these moments. Or like if I look back and I watch some of the video, I think that in some of those times I would have made a mistake. I didn't even realize, because it was so instinctual, how big one of those moments could have been. And had I not been, in that state of mind, I probably would have made that mistake and lost more spots or crashed or something like that.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. It's crazy. Wild. And there is no textbook and how to get there.
Yeah.
Or what to do to operate in that range. It happens. And it's really cool when it does. That's for sure.
Well, Ryan, something I'm always intrigued by when we talk to someone like you is I like to ask the question, what influence has karting had on your life, and what comes to your mind when I say that?
Everything. I mean, the people that I met, just how much different it was. Such a change from being in South Florida playing stick and ball sports to just going and doing karting. Right, you're completely different. I mean, found myself in Naples with the Jollies, avoiding snakes to start, and then it was the work put in, and the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of racing, and the sacrifices I had to make. I mean, when you're 15, your social life's like pretty big deal. It's like my friends, and we're all kind of getting cars at the time, and all the cool girls are over here. We're gonna go over there. Well, man, what are you gonna do? You're gonna go home. You're gonna work on your go-kart? Yeah, I've got to do that. I'm gonna do that. But it's just all that stuff, right? It's all that, and it's like, and I'll never forget, and the motivation it gives you with, I got kicked out of one school because they said, yeah, you're making up the test, you're making up the homework, but the attendance policy is not going to let you stay here.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a school recognized sport. And really what they were saying and how they said it personally to me in a lot of different ways was, you're doing a hobby, you're chasing a hobby. It's never going to work out for you. And the amount of people that have ever told me that, if I had $1 for every time I heard that, would be quite wealthy. But it was that, and it was just that the sacrifices, the work ethic, the give and take at times it took with different drivers and dealing with different personalities and learning how you race different guys differently, and the head games that would go on initially when I was young and in karting, when I first started out, learning all of that, and how the older, more established guys would really try and work you that way even before you ever got in the kart. And I mean, it happens in life and everything, right? All this stuff does. I wish my kids could do that. I wish we could just go. And I don't know how to just pull the plug and take the exit ramp and go do that, because we are so into this deal where my kids have been playing this sport, that sport. They've got their positions, the quarterback, this, that, and the other. I'm coaching 2 different football teams.
Oh, wow.
And to be honest with you, going to Homestead 3 times a week is not appealing to me. I wish it was more like what it used to be.
Yeah.
I wish I had Charlotte. I wish I had Trackhouse right around the corner, like Will Power and these guys do, where they, it's a 15-minute drive from the house. For me, it's an hour and a half to 2 hours with traffic from my house to Homestead. And these are the things that keep me from doing it. But I wish my kids could go out there and get into those uncomfortable positions and learn that and work and get to the point where they want to go, they want to leave, they want to see their friend. No, you've got to do this because this is the prep you need to do to win races, and then actually see that through and win races. I wish we could do all this. Running out of time already. My oldest is going to be 13. So it's like, I feel a tremendous amount of pressure to make those decisions right now. Are we living in the right area? Should I just pull the plug and move north up? There's these kind of things are constantly going through my head. I just want what's best for them because of what I learned in karting. That weighs on me heavily.
Wow. Well said.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there, man. And karting is also much different now. To be really competitive, you really want to just plug and play and go be competitive. You have the talent, you put in some time, you're going to go with one of these bigger teams. Your kid's not going to be sitting there working like my dad and I sitting in South Florida in the summer, completely dehydrated, ripping an engine apart. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
it's different. Yeah, no, definitely a very different era, and it seems like, I mean, each year, I was even talking with some of the different team owners actually right before this, talking with formats and changes for USPKS for next year, right before we went live, right? But it's changed so fast, even in the 10 years from, my last couple of years of doing it to now and to where it is. And, racing still, again, vastly different in IndyCar, right? Like you think of well, I guess to not get too, blunt about it, right? But the asking price for an IndyCar seat's a whole lot higher now than when you were coming up, of what the money had to be brought together to get one of those rides, right? There's so much that's changing with it. But like you said, I think, to me, the problem solving and the struggle part, and the fact that you just lose so much more than you win, whereas in stick and ball sports it's 50-50, right, is such a great point. But the other part too, and kind of a good closing final question for me to follow up from Randy's is, do you have like a favorite traveling memory with you and your dad going on the road? Because living in Florida and then going up to some of those Gold Cup events, right, there has to be one story that comes to mind of like, this was, a funny story to tell, I guess.
Oh, man. We were running so ragged. We had so much gear. We had so much stuff. The preparation of the carts, get ready for a national, turning it around for a regional, this, that, and the other. And I remember one time, I was 15, so I had my learner's permit.
Mm-hmm.
So I could technically drive with my dad in the car, right? And we were under the gun. We left late. We had to get there. I think we were going to South Carolina. That was what track was that?
That'd be Kershaw then, maybe, right?
Kershaw, maybe. Or maybe we were going to Maryland, Chestertown.
Chestertown was probably where you were going. Yeah, that was a Gold Cup.
Anyway.
Kershaw wouldn't have been a track when you were there, when you were racing.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right.
There was one in South Carolina though. I forget which one it was. Anyway.
Oh, I know. It was Palmetto in Columbia, South Carolina was a Gold Cup track.
Yeah, I think we were going there.
Yeah.
We had left to a certain point where we were going to have enough time to roll in, set up, coming off the road, we're going to have to roll in, and we left at like 11 o'clock at night, right? So we hadn't slept that whole day preparing everything, leaving. And then we're doing, I don't know, probably 15 hours on the road, somewhere in there, maybe more. And my dad was exhausted. I was exhausted. And I had napped in the back for a little bit, and he got to the point where I always knew he was getting tired because he literally at the trucks or the gas station's truck stops would get one of those massive bins of gum and just continue to chew it. And he's going down the road, and then he'd start doing this deal where it looked like he was trying to fly, but he'd start just moving his arms around just to keep the blood.
My dad does the same thing.
And his legs would be going and his arms. And I'm like, oh no, he's getting tired. And so you want to switch off? Sure. So I'd get up, super, super safe. We had a big, 26-foot trailer behind. Put it in cruise control. He'd slide over, hold the wheel. I'd climb over the bench seat. We couldn't stop. We also had a massive fuel tank in the back of the truck so that we can go a very long distance. And I get in there, and I want him to sleep because he needs to sleep, and I'm exhausted. I put in several hours, this, that, and the other. And I just remember one point thinking, like, I'm so tired. I remember thinking, I'm just going to rest my eyelids for one moment. Just for a second. Just like one of these deals, Ended up off an embankment going up, with the bridge, under the bridge with one of those deals. With the trailer, through that, down a complete ravine deal, and had a complete coming to Jesus with my dad after that on the side of the road. But that's how hard we were pushing. It wasn't like we were going to some super casual event. We were going to a national that we were in the point standings in, and we had to make it there on time. But that was one of that. When you said a fun traveling memory, that was not a fun one, but that was a big travel memory that I have.
Yeah, no.
Wow.
Yeah. I've never seen my dad. I don't think I've ever seen my dad cry. Sitting on the side of the road, he broke down. He's like, "What are we doing?" He's like, "We almost just killed ourselves." It was just another one of those massively dramatic moments. We got through it. No damage aside from maybe some
some
fenders
in the undercarriage.
Fenders being cracked and stuff like that. But
did you make it to the race?
Holy smokes! Yeah, we made it to the race. I don't remember the result, but we made it to the race.
Oh my gosh!
But even still, right? Like that's I think in closing, like one of the other really cool parts of the sport. Even now, you still see families traveling together, and it's the fact that you and your dad were together, right? And you go through all those ups and downs together. And, I'm sure, you probably look back and go, your relationship with your father's nowhere near what it would be today had it not been for all those core memories growing up and going to the races together. And then, going up the ladder of motorsports together, right?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We spent so much time together, and in that time you have the hard times, you have the good times. the good times by far outweigh the bad, the tougher times. But yeah, my dad ended up, being my right-hand man through the whole deal, through all of racing. He negotiated all my contracts. Yeah, wouldn't have been able to do it without him. And like I said from the beginning, going back to the beginning, is I always remember saying, man, I wish I could. I always said this even when I was, when I was 17, 16. Like I don't know if I hope one day I could be that selfless where I'm just going to give up whatever I'm doing and I'm just going to drive my kid around the country to go-kart tracks, give up everything, So yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you're
super appreciative of that. And yeah,
you may not be driving around the country, but you're kind of doing that now.
Oh yeah.
Whether you realize it or not. Just a little note about your dad. Number one, he was your biggest cheerleader without question. He always showed me respect. And I will tell you, and you know this, we didn't always agree, but he always showed me respect. And you probably don't remember it, but it had to be late 80s, early 90s, maybe. I don't know. You were at Cleveland. It would have been early to mid 90s. You were at Cleveland for the Grand Prix with the American Spirit team. And we were working on some promotions with Ray Hall, and I went in, I found your trailer and I saw your dad, and he said, "Oh, come on in." And he takes me in there, and I saw you for a minute. You were doing something with the computer or whatever, but he took me in like we're just old buddies and introduced me to Stefan Johansson, and we sat and talked for I don't know how long. I always remember that. That was long after the karting days, and it told me that we still had a friendship, and that meant a lot.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, like I said, you did a phenomenal job for us, and the same thing coming back this way. You always showed us a lot of respect, and we really appreciate that. You made karting what it was in that day, so I appreciate it. But one thing, I am not that old. That was 2003. This is not mid-80s.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I'm that old. So
I was like, wait.
Randy
saw me in elementary school. I got to hear this story.
Yeah. Okay. I have diminishing skills as I get older, so you have to understand, Ryan.
Well, that tells us that as fun as this has all been, we're probably all getting a bit delirious. So, Ryan, thank you so much for this. This has been awesome. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys, absolutely. And Xander, I wish we got to spend a little more time at Homestead, but are you at where are you living now? Are you in North Carolina?
I'm over in Dallas, Texas, but I mean I'm here probably 3 days a month. But yeah, when I guess to close that one out, when I got really lucky in 2020, I was kind of figuring out what to do next. Eric and Justin were like, all right, this is about where we're gonna stay. So there wasn't really a next idea up for me, but the original plan was to go down there for 2 to 3 years, and then there might be some more opportunities that would kind of lead from that, or if I wanted to go down that route. And in the second year, I finished my degree, and so as I'm figuring out what I wanted to do next, it ended up being this and everything in Kart Chaser over the last 5 years. But I needed to find lower rent in South Florida, and I had a go-kart racing buddy that was going to school out here in Texas, and through him, I met Trevor, who's a lot of the back end, and ended up, I told him we'll go in on this together. And then I've stayed out here pretty much since. So I've been out here for 5 years. But again, like I say out here loosely, I've probably spent more time still in South Florida, having not lived there, than in certain apartments that I've lived over in Texas. Like we have to plan these episodes around when I'm home. And then, it's back up to North Carolina here in a week for Miami Grand. So it's, yeah.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate the hard work you've done.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome.